Hello viewers, Ford DIYers here with another tutorial video for everyone. In this particular video here, I'll be doing a demonstration of how to replace the outer tie rods on a Ford Ranger. This truck is a 1998 two-wheel drive model. This video is sponsored by Auto Parts Way. They have supplied me with the parts in order to complete the replacement. A link to these products will be included in the description below. Worn or failing tie rods can cause play in the steering, irregular tire wear, wandering, clunking, and stiff steering. Start by safely elevating the front of the truck. Remove both the passenger and driver's side wheels. I have plenty of repair videos on this specific truck, including both the upper control arm and lower ball joint replacement videos, so be sure to check them out. Starting with the passenger side first, it's best to turn that wheel to the right so you have maximum access to that tie rod. I've already done this. If yours are dirty or rusty, use a wire brush to clean up the threads on the inner tie rod. I won't be replacing the inner tie rods as they're still in good condition. These can wear out eventually, but typically last much longer than compared to outer tie rods. Using a paint marker, I mark the position of the inner tie rod. This will give me a reference as to where the threads are positioned. When the inner tie rods are rotated, this adjusts the position of the outer tie rod, therefore affecting your alignment. Now loosen the lock nut which holds the adjustment in place. The inner tie rod has a hex portion where you can fit on a wrench. The inner tie rod uses a 1/2 inch and the lock nut uses a 13/16 inch. If you are running into issues, you can double up on the wrenches, giving it a larger grab area on the inner tie rod. Some people also use a pipe wrench, but this can mark the surface, which I'm not normally a fan of. And there is also tie rod specific wrenches available too. Back that nut off about a 1/2 inch, and then use a paint marker to mark the threads so you know where the position of the outer tie rod sits. Remove that nut on the ball joint side connecting to the steering knuckle. These have a cotter pin which can sometimes be hard to remove. They can become filled with rust or dirt, so if you can't remove the piece of pin sticking out, then break off as much as possible and use a wrench to twist the nut, which will shear the rest of it off. Break the ball joint free. For this, I'm using a tuning fork. If you're not replacing the tie rods, use a ball joint separator instead so you don't damage the rubber boots. And now spin off the tie rod. You may need to clean the mating surface with a wire brush on the steering knuckle. Compare the old and new tie rods to ensure they are the same. As mentioned earlier, these parts were supplied by Auto Parts Way in order to produce this video. Links to these tie rods for both the Canadian and US sites will be included in the description below, so be sure to check them out. Make sure the tie rod end comes at the painted line mark on the threads on the inner tie rod. Reinstall the taper back into the steering knuckle, then install a castle nut. There will be a hole in the threaded shaft. This is for the cotter pin and needs to be aligned with the castle nut. I'll show you a little further on in the video with the next one on how that works. The castle nut torque specification is 44 to 59 foot-pounds. Ensure that castle nut aligns with the hole in the threaded stud. The tie rod comes with a new cotter pin. Install that, and using needle nose pliers, bend over the opposite side. And now run back that locking nut on the inner tie rod and tighten it down. Now moving on to the opposite side of the truck, mark the position of the tie rod using a paint marker. Again, I have cleaned up the threads using a wire brush. Loosen and back off that locking nut. The inner tie rod uses a 1/2 inch and that locking nut is a 13/16 inch. Use a paint marker to mark the distance on the threads. Using pliers, I also find side cutters work well for this too. Try to remove that cotter pin. Then using a 13/16 inch wrench, remove the castle nut, and whatever remaining cotter pin is left, it will shear off. Now break that taper loose using a tuning fork. Unfortunately, I was having a bit of trouble here, so I gave the threaded stud a few hits with the hammer, and it did break free. If you are reusing the tie rod, then I don't recommend doing this as you will damage the threads. As you can see, the rubber boots are in rough shape on both these ball joints. The boots are intended to keep foreign contaminants out and prevent lubrication from escaping. Here is a perfect example when a boot fails. As you can see, the boot is filled with debris, along with most likely moisture causing rusting. This would not only cause the joint to wear out quicker, but also making the steering stiff to operate. Giving you a better view with the castle nut being installed on a threaded stud, once that nut has been torqued to spec, you may need to tighten it slightly further to align the cutouts on the castle nut with that hole. Once it is aligned, then install the cotter pin and bend over the ends. The cotter pin is used as a safety to prevent the nut from backing off. Reinstall the new tie rod and line it up with the paint marks. Reinstall the taper back into the steering knuckle. Install the new castle nut. The castle nut torque specification is 44 to 59 foot-pounds. Install the new cotter pin and bend over the ends using needle nose pliers. Now tighten down the lock nut against the outer tie rod. Next project on this truck will be replacing the brake shields. And reinstall the wheels. Considering the alignment could have been affected by the new tie rods, I would highly recommend taking your vehicle in for an alignment. Improper alignment can cause handling issues and tire wear issues. New videos released every week on my channel. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button. It's a huge help to me, and leave a comment below if you found this tutorial helpful. If you're not a subscriber, be sure to also hit that subscribe button, and thank you for watching.